All right, welcome to English class. English. Pass the tea and crumpets, governor. Oh no, wrong kind of English, sorry. We're going to actually talk about grammar today. And our lesson is on adjective clauses that begin with who, whom, and whose. So yesterday we heard about adjective clauses and how they have relative pronouns and then other words as well. Let me get back to there. Where and when are also known to introduce adjective clauses, and in order to find the word it modifies, remember we go right in front of the clause to identify that noun or pronoun. Okay, so basically maybe you've wondered, when do we use who, when do we use whom? That is something we're going to explore today, as we're also learning about adjective clauses. And then just remember that whose is a possessive pronoun that's in a clause. Okay, so that's the possessive pronoun. Okay, let's get into our lesson. It says, we'll skip the 1 minute warm up unless you'd like to do that on your own. It says you've already studied adjective clauses introduced by the relative pronoun who. All right, and so then you get an example there. It says Emily Dickinson, who lived in the 1800s, was a poet. So Emily Dickinson was a poet is the independent clause there. Who lived in the 1800s is the subordinate clause. More specifically, it's an adjective clause because it modifies the word right in front of it, Emily Dickinson. Okay, not just Dickinson, right? Because Emily Dickinson is her whole name. That's one proper noun. All right, and it says the relative pronouns whom and whose are forms of who, right, that you can use in, it almost sounds like a Dr. Seuss book, right? Whom and whose are forms of who that you can use in an adjective clause describing a person, all right? So Dickinson was influenced by the English writer Emily Bronte, whom she admired. Okay, so why wouldn't it be who she admired? Well, the reason why is this word right here. Okay, this is the subject of the clause. And since it is already there, we do not need a word like who that really serves as the subject. All right, so if you see a subject in a clause, and you're trying to determine do you use who or whom, you're going to use whom. All right, let's look at the next one. Ralph Waldo Emerson was another writer for whom Dickinson had great respect. All right, now they threw the for at you here, didn't they? Excuse me. And so, typically we would say we begin with the relative pronoun whom Dickinson had great respect, right? But remember that rule that's in order for us to figure out what word or noun it modifies, we go right in front of it. Well, for isn't a noun or pronoun, is it? All right, so we basically just remember just to include that word, even though it's not really a relative pronoun, and because we are really modifying writer. Okay, so for whom Dickinson had great respect would be the entire adjective phrase. Okay, and again, same rule applies. The word in front of it is what it modifies. Then it says Dickinson, whose life was quiet and secluded. So, if we include the word who there, who life was quiet and secluded? No. Whom life was quiet and secluded? No. Whose. So we need a possessive pronoun, and the only possessive pronoun that we know of that is also a relative pronoun, it would be whose. So that makes our decision a little bit easier. I'll be honest with you, the toughest part about today's lesson is going to be figuring out, do I use who or do I use whom? Because we can't, a lot of times, for this particular one, we can't use the sound test. Like we can't say it and go, that doesn't sound right. Because, we really butcher who and whom quite a bit when we speak. All right, and so what sounds right might not actually be the right answer in this case. So this is why we need to know this. Then it says, I'm right here on page 402, it says to decide whether to use the relative pronoun who, whom, or whose in an adjective clause, see how the pronoun is used within the clause. Okay, so that's really what we need to be looking at. So it says who, first of all, use as a subject in a clause. So if you have a clause that is subjectless, you're going to use who as the subject. But if it already has a subject, then you're going to use whom, okay? Because whom you use as a direct object or an object of a preposition in a clause. So that's pretty much you know, if I'm to simplify it for you, I'm just going to say that if there's already a subject in the clause, use whom. If there is not a subject in a clause and you need one, use who. Okay? Your book doesn't quite say it in those terms, but I think that's probably the easiest way to kind of understand what you're supposed to do here. And there you see the couple examples on top of page 403. It says, remember, first of all, that the independent clause does not affect your choice of a relative pronoun. It says, decide how the relative pronoun functions in the adjective clause. If it is the subject, use who. If it is an object, use whom. It's kind of similar to what I said. So notice that the independent clause in each of these sentences is exactly the same. Emily Dickinson is the poet. Emily Dickinson is the poet. But what's different are the clauses. The clauses, one of them has a subject, this one does not. Okay, so Emily Dickinson is the poet, and then you have wrote those lines. Well, do I use who or whom? You need who because wrote is a verb and there's no subject here at all. So who is going to serve as the subject? But in this clause right here, I admire most, I and admire get a subject and a predicate already. So now you know to use whom, okay, because you don't need the subject who, all right? So that's just a good way to, so it's a good way to remember. So in the middle here, page 403, here's what I'd like you to do. I'm gonna like you to pause the video, and then I'd like you to go through numbers 1 to 6, write them down on a piece of paper, and then let's kind of go through it together and see how you did. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video, work through numbers 1 to 6 on page 403. And we're back. Number 1, okay, so for number 1, want you to think about, do we have, in this particular case, we could use the sound test, I guess, right? Everyone whose knows? No. Everyone whom knows? No. Everyone who knows. All right. So knows, right, is the verb. We need a subject here, don't we? Everyone who knows. All right. So a lot of times what we can do is we can just look at the word next to it. If the word next to the blank, if the word right here, like for example, is a subject, then we know we'd use whom. If it was did not have a subject, then we know we use who, which is what we did here in number 1. So everyone who knows Mr. Arno enjoys his company. Let's first of all, number 2, let's maybe eliminate whose first of all. Mr. Arno, whose has 5 brothers. Okay, so it's either who or whom, right? Now look at this word. Is this word a subject? Okay, if not, then we need a subject, and so number 2 has to be who. All right, Mr. Arno, who has 5 brothers, has only 1 sister. Number 3, let's see if we can eliminate whose. He lives next door to his sister, whose children he adores. Aha, we have a whose citing. So that would be, we're looking for a possessive pronoun, whose children he adores. Number 4, the children for blank, he writes poems, adore him. So here's the blank. Let's look at the word after the blank. It's a subject. So that being said, we need the word whom right here. Okay? Because otherwise we'd have who, which is a subject, and then he, which is a subject right next to each other. All right, but let's do the hearing test. The children for who he writes poems adore him. That doesn't sound too horrible. The children for whom he writes poems adore him. That's better. Okay, but maybe it doesn't sound better. Maybe it sounds about the same to you, but it's because we don't always use who and whom correctly all the time. But now you will after today for the rest of your life. Okay, so number 5, it says he has become a serious poet. Blank work is published. All right, so do you see a subject here in this next to the blank? Neither do I. So I guess who we would maybe put. Wait a minute. We didn't eliminate the whose. We didn't do that first. Maybe we should do that first, right? He has become a serious poet whose work is published. Oh, you know what? Yeah, we didn't do the whose test first. That's my bag. All right, number 6. He is a creative person. Blank everyone likes. All right. So everyone be a subject. Likes would be a predicate. So guess what we're putting here then? We already have a subject. We don't need another one. So whom. He is a creative person whom everyone likes. All right, so let's sum it up with the magic wand yielding owl with the Harry Potter glasses. Use who when the relative pronoun is the subject of the adjective clause. All right. Use whom when the relative pronoun is the direct object or an object of the preposition in the adjective clause. All right. Or look at the word next to it. Is there already a subject? Yeah, if so, then use whom. If you need a subject, use who. And then use whose when the relative pronoun shows possession. So as you go through the examples, do the whose elimination test first, and then you know that you're choosing between who or whom, and then you're looking for subjects or no subjects. Any questions on that? Please reach out to me. Hopefully you found this video, helpful with your assignment. Speaking of which, you do have a worksheet, a double-sided worksheet, again, that I'm going to assign to you today, Thursday. There will be no assignment tomorrow. Please hand in all 4 worksheets to me on Monday, all right, so that you can be counted as present because that's how we take attendance. All right, so if you have any questions, reach out. Please watch the Powtoons video as well. All of this is on the EduBlog site, and I also sent you a link this morning in your email. All right, everybody, have a great rest of your day, and hopefully have a good rest of your virtual learning week. Oh, and I forgot one more thing. Cheerio!